Coyotes.
There you go. Hey, Rink Rats, what's going on? Andy Campbell here. Welcome back to season 5, episode 15 of the Chicago Rinkcast from the Rink.com, where hockey always happens. And welcome back. Great to see you all. We are here with two usual suspects and a guest. Christian Deme is here, otherwise known as the Stache or Stache on Twitter for the Q Stache, a very knowledgeable presence in the hockey world. Stache, how the hell are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Andy. Doing well. Just hanging in there. Taking a night off of watching the Hawks get throttled and then enjoying it.
Awesome. Well, welcome back and appreciate your hat as well as your Peter Chiarelli decorum in the background, if you will. And Sean Fitzgerald is here with us. Shawnee, what's going on tonight? Talk to us about your hat. Looks beautiful.
Tonight's is college hockey from the Buccigross Overtime Challenge vintage on the back there. I got it. I got Minnesota because I spent the entire year of 2011 living in Minnesota.
Ooh, very nice.
I watched some Gopher games. I kind of embraced where I was. So I have some Minnesota paraphernalia.
Sounds good to me. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. And Eric Andrews, what's shaking? Content editor of The Rink. What's happening, my friend?
Not a whole lot right now. It's been a quiet week. Obviously, not very many Hawks games of late, which, as Stache said, that's not really a bad thing. So,
all good.
Yep.
The Hawks games we have seen of late have been in the L column and will be in the L column for the foreseeable future. Quick shout out to our sponsors, puckhockey.com, puckhcky.com. Use discount code THERINK in all caps for 10% off. $100 gets you a free t-shirt. Go check it out. Got some good loot on there. Anyway, tonight, folks, we are going to get right into it, and we're going to talk about the Blackhawks and the upcoming trade deadline, which is, 4 weeks away? Someone give me a date. What's the date of the deadline?
March 21st.
March 21st, yes. We're a solid 4 weeks away, maybe a little bit longer. And there are some names that are going out around. Obviously, if you were to ask anyone 2 months ago, the biggest name was Marc-Andre Fleury. The latest and greatest name that is been thrown around in the Twitter universe, there have been rumors that there was an offer for him at one point, is Brandon Hagel. Now, let's be clear. Let's clarify this first. Brandon Hagel's awesome. Who doesn't like to watch Brandon Hagel? He's a hell of a hockey player. All right. Big surprise. Originally a 6th-round pick, Red Deer Rebels out of the WHL. Spent some time in Rockford, and then last year made a huge kaboom. 23 years old. Only $1.5 million, I believe, of a cap hit. That's it for the next couple of years as an RFA. Very affordable. So much to like about him. That's why the return on him could be nice. Sell high is kind of the message that you're hearing, at least from me. I'll use I language. But what is going on where people are saying that he's untouchable? No, you can't trade him. What is this? Stache, what do you think of this Hagel situation? Welcome back. We're going to start with you.
Thanks. Well, I certainly don't think he's untouchable. I think he's definitely one of the more valuable pieces you have for any team that's looking to acquire somebody at the deadline. You know, he's an analytical darling. He does a lot of things right. He plays hard. He scores. He plays defense. He never skates it in. And he's on an extremely friendly contract of $1.5 million, I think. And I think he's locked down for another 2 years. So obviously really valuable to have a young guy. Forgot to mention that at that kind of price range and someone who's improving year to year. So I understand that the perspective that they should be asking for a lot for him, and they should, and they are. Which makes a lot of sense to me. I certainly don't see him as an untouchable guy, and the reason for that is I don't think his ceiling is high enough to be anything higher than like a second line forward. He kind of slots into that second and third line forward role nicely on the Hawks. It'd probably be realistically like a third line guy on a team that's better than the Hawks. And I think he'd be a really solid acquisition for a team that's contending and needs somebody to fill that position. I think, the the asking price for him is high right now, and I think that's fair. Based on what the Habs got for Toffoli, based on what the market's like, and for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, he's a really valuable asset to have for any team that's rebuilding any team that's rebuilding, any team that's contending, because, those teams are going to be close to the cap, and getting a guy who can contribute that much at that fair of a cap hit is going to be a really, really valuable addition to any team, especially the team that's good, that's in cap hell and going to be in cap hell for the foreseeable future if they're going to be competitive for the next couple of years. So he's certainly valuable. I think some of the talk about the returns of the Hawks wanted a first round draft pick and a prospect and maybe more. I guess they were offered that and turned down a few offers in that range. I don't blame them for asking for a lot for him, because he's a really valuable guy, and he's someone that you can certainly have as part of your rebuild. That's a nice piece, but we have to be realistic at the same time. This team does not have first round draft pick. They desperately need one. They need to rebuild and tear down, and I don't know if he's the guy to do it. He's a nice piece to have if you want to build around him and add him to that group that you want to build around. He's a solid guy, young guy, fair price. So I can certainly understand the reasoning behind wanting to keep him, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. Who knew that he would be such a hot commodity come trade deadline?
Yeah. Well, certainly his as you mentioned, his salary at his age is a very cap controllable salary. So, I mean, he's not a rental. So that asking price, I do agree that the asking price is the Hawks are in a good position to negotiate here. Now, Sean, I got a question for you, man. It's like one of these, okay, fine, drive the price really high. But what if you don't move him? I mean, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. So if you don't move him, you still have a really nice player, like Stache has said. He's still under a team-friendly contract. My only concern is the reason people are saying not to move him is because he's developed, and the Blackhawks have shown an inability to develop players. I don't think that's justified and why you should hold on to him, because the guy who ran the organization, Stan Bowman, is no longer in charge. Right. So and hopefully, whether it's Kyle Davidson or some outside candidate comes in and is going to implement a plan, because as Andrew Bard zinged me with earlier in the Rink chat, Stan Bowman I said, yeah, the Stan Bowman plan, and Bard made the comment Stan didn't have a plan. So,
well, we don't even know who's going to be driving the bus before the trade line anyway. There's that too. But whose decision is it?
Yeah. But the need for a first round pick is so great for this team.
Yes.
Whether it's in like Tyler Toffoli's deal, what he got from the Habs should make the Hawks want to drive the price up. And I like Brandon Hagel, but being like the top 3 scorer on your team is not something to be proud of. Like, if this team was trending in the right direction and everyone was, building off of it, and they were like the 08 Hawks where they were close and getting ready to be good, sure, but they're not. No. They're in the doldrums. They're a bad team, and he's the only real asset that you're going to get return for, that you don't have to, talk into leaving or any of that other stuff. So I think it would be a mistake not to trade him, especially considering first round picks. Like, the numbers bear it out. 50% of all first round picks are NHL players. And that's probably skewed because how many first round picks does Steve Yzerman hit on as opposed to what Stan Bowman hit on? So, like, that's skewed. Like, the best teams in the NHL are driven by their first round picks. Brandon Hagel was a 6th round pick. Mario Terabasi on the Rinkcast last year said Brandon Hagel was a 4A player.
Yeah.
Like, that was that, and he's exceeded that ceiling. So I think anything if you can get a king's ransom like Tyler Toffoli's deal, you got to do it in a heartbeat. I like him.
Yeah.
But you got to do it.
Yeah. Where are you, Eric, on this? Are you selling high? And is this the most valuable this player might ever be as far as a returnable asset?
It's a great question. I will premise everything I'm going to say by saying that I really do like Brandon Hagel. I mean, I think, like you said at the top of the show, Andy, everybody does. Who doesn't like the guy?
It's fabulous.
He plays the game the right way. That's someone you can very easily cheer for, and you just like what he does and what he offers. So I just want to start by saying that I really like him. He's one of my favorite players on the current team. So yeah, just to establish that. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think the value for him is ever going to be higher. I mean, every passing day, he's obviously getting older. Not that he's old by any means, but I mean, being 23, that's definitely something that adds to his value. We talked about the cap hit and the fact that that's for 2 more years. That's extremely valuable. Like Stache was saying, to a contending team that doesn't have much space, a guy like that is hugely valuable to them. So yeah, I don't see that his value would ever be higher, probably for the rest of his career, than it will be from today through March 21st. So yeah, to answer that question, that's what I say there. But just my scope on the whole thing, like we were saying, I think, on a Stanley Cup team, he's probably a third line winger at best, probably a bottom 6 guy. Can he move up and play on a second line? Sure. But if that, that's not really where you want him to be if you're going to be winning a Stanley Cup. So, let's just establish he's a third line winger. That's fair. If you are, quote unquote, rebuilding around a third line winger, you're not rebuilding.
No.
Period. Like, that can't be one of your rebuild cornerstones, so to speak. So that's one of my big things, why people think he's untouchable. He's a third line winger. A third line winger is not untouchable, period. And then you go into the return that you could get for him. And even if they did get an offer of a first and a prospect, which was rumored that was offered, they turned it down. So they clearly want more than that, which, as Stache said, that makes sense. That's great. Yeah. But let's just take that package that they allegedly turned down, a first and a decent prospect. If you cannot replace Brandon Hagel with a late first-round pick, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Again, this is a third-line winger. If you can't get a third-line winger out of a first-round pick, that is a huge problem.
Right.
So, that's something there. So even if you just say, okay, the first-round pick in Hagel, value-wise, should wash out. If you just look at it that way, then you're still getting a free prospect on top of that. Maybe it's a good prospect, maybe it's not. It's, a lottery ticket, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. You're still, it's still a net positive on the value. So, that's something to think about. And then, like what Sean was saying, you see all these people on Twitter saying, well, they need to keep him because he's developed nicely and they can't develop players. And, it's funny because it's like Sean said, Stan Bowman isn't here anymore, so that is completely irrelevant. But also then those same people saying that are people that a few months ago were saying that Stan Bowman is a good drafter. So it's just like, well,
I don't. That's speaking out of both sides of your mouth there. Yeah, I mean, the thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I just totally cut you off there.
No,
do you have another thought on that?
No. I mean, I think those are really kind of my big things. I mean, like you guys were saying, his ceiling is only going to be so high.
Wait, he's not going to be Artemi Panarin?
No.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, anything is possible, Sean. But
the thing according to whatever that guy on Twitter was that argued with you and me for a day.
The Chicago Blackhawks on-ice product, let's get real here, is going to be irrelevant with or without Brandon Hagel, probably for the next 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. I mean, it's just not going to be good. I mean, they will not be competitive for another 4 to 5 years. And so, I have no problem with the waiting game. I have no problem over the next 4 weeks watching the market materialize and watching the price go up and up and up, as it probably will. 2 weeks ago when I heard that there was a first and a prospect for him, I went bonkers saying that, oh my God, how did they pass this up? Now you're seeing the market start to manifest, and they could really drive this price up. I guess where I'm super worried is that if they just watch this go by and they don't do anything, which would just be an enormous miss. And here's the thing, and this is, John Dietz, who covers the Blackhawks, and sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't, tweeted, everyone's for sale on the Blackhawks, everyone, even Brandon Hagel, but if it's me, it has to be more than a top prospect and a first-round pick. Give me 2 more draft picks, maybe a second and a third, then we might have a deal. Might. Come on.
So
if someone's offering 3 picks, a first, a second, and a third, and a prospect, and you're not trading Hagel, you should not be in the business of hockey. I mean, you just shouldn't be. So now the Hawks might have an opportunity here whenever we find out who their new GM is, and or whoever's going to be, negotiating trades.
Ray Napientak.
Yeah, Ray. When Ray's running the show. But now you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, who a lot think could still fetch something at the deadline when teams get desperate, and Brandon Hagel. They're in a position right now where they could actually walk away from the trade deadline with some serious chips, and meaning multiple draft picks. And maybe now 2 first-round picks is probably too high, unless Fleury's packaged with DeHaan or someone else for that matter, or they get really creative. But maybe a first and then multiple draft picks and prospects after that, then actually you're rebuilding.
But even if you get a second-round pick in the Hagel deal, that's still, like, there are good players in the second round. Like, one of the Blackhawks' top prospects, Drew Kamesa, was taken in the second round.
But if you're balking at a first-round pick and another pick and a prospect for Hagel, then it's just, now we're getting silly. Now we're getting now and if not, fine, Hawks, great. And fine, all you Hawks fans and all you writers out there, you said this about Dominic Kubalik 2 years ago when he was a 30-goal scorer. Now we're talking about a guy who's trending to score 20 to 23 this year, and you're calling him untouchable. Well, now Kubalik, you can't get much for him. You get something, but not a ton. So, they kind of wasted that. They have no leverage with Dominic Kubalik anymore. Well, he's an RFA. They can bring him back for cheap, but I don't know. I kind of forget that Dominic Kubalik's even on the Blackhawks at this stage.
Go ahead. Can I say something? Yeah, just like the thing I've read a lot on Twitter and whatnot is that, people are always saying that, a draft pick is a lottery pick and, it's not a guarantee. And the Hawks are in a position where they don't have a choice but to gamble.
Right.
If they don't gamble, they're in such a bad place with prospects and rebuilding wise that they have to do it. They don't have a choice. They have to take those risks and see what they can do in the draft. And if you're getting a prospect back for him, hopefully one that has some NHL experience, that sort of hedges the gamble a little bit, but they're just not in a position where they can say no to gambling. They have to do it because there's no other way. They're not going to fix this in free agency. They're just not.
No, they're not. Nor should they try. I mean, and please don't try.
Yeah.
I don't think that would make a whole lot of sense. So, like we've all said, Brandon Hagel's awesome. Like, love him. But I don't. Maybe you could package him with somebody. I mean, the Blackhawks, they've got this log jam of kind of average D prospects. And I don't know if someone would want to take a flyer on a few of those guys if you were to package him with somebody.
But you don't want to make the mistake like they did with Gustav Forsling. They waited. They traded him a year or two. Now look what he did with with Florida against us. Like, he's 20 minutes on the ice. They literally traded him a year too early.
Sure.
And they traded him to Carolina, who he didn't really do much there, and then he went to Florida, and now he's a top pairing or top 4 defenseman. And what is he, still only 25?
Right.
I think they've kind of like Stache said, they gotta gamble for sure.
They do. Furthermore, I'm sorry, go ahead, Shawnee.
No. Yeah, I was gonna say, it was just furthermore with their middle. If you think the middle tier guys if they have enough of them, gamble one of them away for sure.
Right.
Just hopefully you're correct in your gamble.
Right. And I mean, yeah, and at some point, you're gonna have to You have to pay Hagel at some point. I know that's kind of years down the road. DeBrincat has one more year left on his contract, and then he's probably going to, have a big payday. And after that, I mean, we're still, the team is still going to be, Stache, to your point about you can't do this in free agency. They're still going to be recovering from a lot of Stan Bowman nonsense. I mean, Tyler Johnson is on the book for 2 more years at $5 million per after he comes back, and that's, I know. And he'll be immovable at that point. Jake McCabe is being paid $4 million per season through, until June of 2025. And so, the whole idea that this could get, fixed through free agency, you do have to take some of these chances and take some risks. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully he'll get moved, because if he doesn't, that's their biggest bargaining chip right now at the trade deadline to get into the first round. Even so, who else is on your wire? Who else are you thinking about? Hawks for sale, other deadline chips. What about Flower, Eric? What do you think? Any more? We've knocked around some destinations for him. A lot of people are saying, yeah, he still might go to Washington, not back to Washington, but to Washington.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at it purely from the Hawks standpoint, yeah, obviously it makes sense. Trade him, honestly, kind of just get whatever the best return is. Doesn't matter where he's going, whatever. Retain half of it, get the best return you can. I'll kind of play the other side on this one. Yeah. I don't know if he's actually going to leave. I'm not sold on the fact that he would be willing to go to another team for a few months. I know I kind of wish Gate was on, because I know he completely disagrees with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was, he kind of had to give it thought to even come to Chicago in the first place. So he just moved his family not even a year ago. And yeah, I mean, could he just go on the road for, 3-4 months, not seeing them? I mean, yes, he could. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say that. It's another thing to do it. So I don't know. I'm just not sold on him wanting to do it. If I was in his shoes, knowing that I was coming back and playing again next year, which it sounds like that's the case and that's what he's planning on doing, knowing his situation, I might just say, I'm just going to take my shot in free agency, pick where I want to go.
Wow.
And that's that.
Boy, that'd be a dagger.
So, I mean, do I think it's likely that he will re-sign in Chicago? Not necessarily. I mean, it's possible, if he really does not want to move his family again, I can see it happening. I wouldn't say that's likely. I wouldn't count on that at all. But yeah, I'm not 100% sold that he's going to be traded at the deadline, because he kind of does hold the chips. Even though he doesn't have a full no movement clause or anything. They told him when he came to Chicago, you control your destiny. If you want to go, you'll go. If you don't want to go, you will not go.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, if he wants to go, yeah, he'll go, and you take whatever the best return is for him. But I'm not 100% there that's going to happen.
Yeah, got it. Stache, what do you think, Fleury? There's some rumblings that maybe even a return to Vegas is a possibility. I don't know the extent of Robin Lehner's injury, but
I think his injury is pretty serious. I don't know if he's going to go to Vegas. I think the way that they kind of handled that may have soured him on that. But I guess that's for him to decide whether or not the Hawks should trade him. I mean, I think this is probably the biggest no-brainer in the entire bunch. He's 37. There's no guarantee that he's going to re-sign here unless you can get an extension together before the deadline for a couple of years as a stopgap till, someone like Comesso is ready for a shot. Because, I will say that the Blackhawks goaltending situation is gross beyond Marc-Andre Fleury. And this guy is hiding so many warts for this team with the way that he plays. I mean, first of all, I think Lankin and Delia are both free agents in this summer.
Yep. You're right.
Neither of them are a number one goalie, that's for sure. Whether, Lankinen has kind of shown that he could be a solid backup. Soderblom, had a rough night a couple nights ago against Columbus, but I guess the Hawks are pretty high on him. But I don't know if his ceiling is anything higher than a backup either. So they really don't have anyone. I don't know if you guys have looked at the free agent goalie pool this summer, but it's gross. The UFAs are nasty. If someone like Ottinger doesn't re-sign with Dallas, which I think is very unlikely with the way that he's playing, that would be someone. But he's a restricted free agent, so again, Dallas controls a lot of that. But God, it's just a gross free agent pool. I don't know how you're going to fix it. Like if he's gone, this team is going to be really, really bad for a few years. You want those high number first round draft picks, you're going to get them because there's going to be no one that's going to be able to stop goals.
Yeah. But I think we need to get to that point. I mean, unfortunately, as sad as that sounds, I mean, this team needs to be a lot worse before it can ever get better. But Shawnee, do you agree with this? Do you think there's a chance Marc-Andre Fleury might still be around?
No. I think in a recent post-game interview, he said, I'm not worried about when I'll be traded. And then he corrected himself. He goes, and he kind of smiled and said, if I'll be traded. So I think he knows the writings on the wall. I think he likes it here. They all like him. But, and I know I made the obscure baseball reference the last time, how people don't want to move their families and stuff. I'm not going to make it this time, but I'm just saying, I think he wants to go. I think he's going to go. It makes sense. To Stache's point, that's something people need to think about. Marc-Andre Fleury does cover up a ton of warts.
Oh, yeah.
And the Blackhawks goaltending situation is, like Stache said, horrible. Malcolm Subban was traded. Delia probably won't, for whatever reason, they won't even play Delia at the NHL level this year again. So he'll mercifully leave in free agency. So you're left with Kevin Lankinen, who's an RFA, and Soderblom. So maybe you bring in Gates and JJ's guy, JF Berube, and have him make his gallant return to the Blackhawks to go get his brains beat in. But
yeah, I don't know if you seek some sort of return or some sort of prospect return if you move Hagel or someone else, if a goalie prospect is somehow included in that demand.
Yeah, because like Stache said, Comesso, but Comesso's still
he's 19.
He's 4, maybe 5 years of. How many years did Corey Crawford languish in Rockford after playing his full complement of years in major juniors? And even then, he still had to beat out Marty Turco to get the full-time job. So goalies take way longer to develop than most people think.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping there's a suitor out there for him. I'm hoping they get a return. I mean, it'd be a real shame to just watch him leave town without anything in return back for him. But I don't know. To your point, Eric, if he was willing to stick around, I don't know what he would cost. But why? I don't know.
There's not much point in keeping him around long term. I mean, like Stache was saying, he keeps. Well, yeah, I guess.
Didn't you buy one, Eric?
Marketing. What's that?
Did you buy his jersey?
No.
Oh, I thought you were going to.
No, I've thought about it, but it's just not a priority. But, I mean, yeah, realistically, it's not like he's going to be around when they're, a good team again, obviously. But, kind of like what Andy was saying, do you even want someone around that's kind of helping this team be in the middle? Not really.
Right.
This team needs to get to the bottom. I mean, if you have a chance at Connor Bedard next year, you kind of want to do that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, having Marc-Andre Fleury around is, the least of your concerns. That's a good problem to have, but
right.
I mean, yeah, it's just not a long-term answer whatsoever. And obviously the rest of their system is just horrific, like we've all said at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as a return, if they do move him, is a first going to happen? Probably not just on his own. I think if you retain half of it, you're probably looking at a second and or a good prospect, maybe, another late draft pick or something. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, so obviously there is some value that you're going to get there. And, that's definitely worth something to the Hawks for sure. Like we said, a draft pick is, a lottery ticket, whatever, but you still need to be accumulating those in order to maximize the likelihood that you're going to hit on something. So, and this kind of goes, what's that?
And the lottery ticket statement is I think we keep emphasizing lottery ticket, which is true, but in the hands of the right person, it's not so much a risk. Like if Steve Yzerman was making these picks, you wouldn't doubt. Like everybody doubted Sider, and Yzerman was right. He's right more often than he's not. So the big thing too with the lottery ticket is who's making the pick.
Well, and we won't know that, and we still don't know that, and that's another really frustrating point right now. Is the Blackhawks still haven't hired a new general manager? They've taken a lot of pride through graphics and nice backgrounds over Twitter and Instagram of who they're interviewing. And that's all very well, but what's the deal here? I mean, is Kyle going to be calling the shots before the trade deadline? Or is it going to be someone new? Stache, have you heard anything new since the interviews or any rumblings?
32 Thoughts, Elliot and Jeff are kind of on this one, and Elliot's really been following the progress on it, and it looks like he said he was expecting a decision on it either this week or last week. So, or at least some sort of internal decision. Whether or not they announce that is a different issue. But I mean, I at this point, I don't know what they're dragging their feet about. I know they sat on it for a couple of months because they wanted to, make sure everything was in order, and they set up their internal systems after what happened, and kudos to them for doing that. They'd certainly needed to do that, but I don't know what is taking so long, and the longer it takes, the more I'm inclined to think that Davidson's going to be the guy. Because if they're not in a rush to get a GM in place and get them settled, as we're getting, a month away, even less to the deadline, that's telling me that, they're kind of leaning towards someone like Davidson and keeping it in-house. And that's sort of been my thought the entire time. Now, whether or not I think that's the right decision is a different question. But in my opinion, I think that's the way they're leaning at, and that's just totally my gut feeling. That's not based on anything that I've heard or anything, concrete.
Stache, what is your opinion? Like, why not Davidson?
I really like Tulsky, the guy from Carolina. I think they need someone like that. First of all, I think they need an outside voice. That's been something that I've harped on for a long time. It's been, the same crew running the show here with Stan, and Davidson's kind of worked his way up in the organization. Kudos to him for doing so. But I think this team would benefit greatly from an outside voice and someone who's smart analytically, kind of fits the mold, in my opinion, as to what this team needs, particularly as they're rebuilding. Capitalizing on, analytics are finding good guys who are good analytically. And, I'm going to get crucified for this by the old guard of the hockey community, because, I think being smart analytically is going to find you guys like Hagel, guys that you can either flip into something valuable or turn into something more valuable, or develop and make into a good asset for the team. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Kyle Davidson's philosophy. He might be that guy. He might, believe in all those things, but we'll see.
Yeah, we had a good podcast on that. A lot of people like him. I'm a big Darsh guy myself. I would love to see Darsh get the job just because of his player representation and, his work with the NHLPA and his strong business background. But yeah, but it's go time, isn't it? I mean, let's go here. Like, it's the trade deadline is 4 weeks away, and it's unbelievable that we don't even know what's going on yet. It's really, the timing could not be worse. So I don't know. We'll see. I want to shift gears a little bit. First of all, other tradable chips. We've thrown out DeHaan in podcasts before. We've thrown out Kubalik. I don't know if you can get much other than a new pen for Shawnee to click, but click, click, click. But any other players or any other shocking names before I shift gears to the most shocking name of them all?
I mean, I think you got to trade someone like DeHaan. I think he's also another one of your most tradable assets for a team that's trying to, get stronger defensively. He's played pretty well. Obviously, his health history is a concern, but I think someone like him, someone like Carpenter, I think those guys have got to go because those, those are you get fourth line guy, you got a depth defenseman on any other team. Those are not guys that you're going to want to keep around and guys with expiring contracts. So, I mean, now is the time to move them. I don't know if you're going to get anything substantial for either one of them, but, anything that you can do, those are definitely the guys you want to move. Maybe even someone like Borgstrom. I don't know what their feelings are on his development, but based on, how they've been playing him, how they've been healthy, scratching him and dropping him in the lineup tells me that they're not really high on him. I think, those are three guys you definitely want to get out the door if you can get anything.
But he was the greatest college player Stan Bowman ever saw.
I mean, going to DeHaan, there are definitely some teams out there with some leaky blue lines that would, who knows, maybe if you could get as high as a 4th or 5th rounder for Calvin DeHaan, I'd say you just pull the trigger at that point.
Gus has got to go too. Somebody's got to take.
I don't know if anyone's taking Gus.
Somebody's taking. I guarantee you, somebody will take him.
It was Calgary took him a few years ago for a 6th-round pick or something.
Yep, so they'll get a lottery ticket for him.
I mean, there's plenty of teams in the East that need help on the back end. I can think the Boston Bruins are one of them. Maybe even the Caps. Toronto obviously needs help defensively. In the West, I certainly wasn't sold after going to the Bruins Avalanche game on the Colorado Avalanche blue line Sunday. That's for sure. I think that, I don't know, those that are, big fans of Sam Girard, if you're going into the playoffs into a gunfight with him, I'm not sure, I wouldn't be betting on that guy. But, in Edmonton, who is now clawed their way back into it after despair, they could be looking for DeHaan. Is there anyone out there looking for a Kubalik? Or what do you do about Kubalik? Because he is an RFA. I mean, he might actually come at a discount next year. The other RFA is Kirby Dach, who I don't see anyone trading for because no one needs room in their press box during a cup run. Kubalik, talk to me, boys. What do you think?
He has value on any team.
Go ahead.
He has value on any team because he can still light it up on the power play. He can be more like a specialty type guy, bottom 6 forward. Maybe he moves up the line if he's got some juice, but he's got some value to somebody.
Gotcha.
And you're not going to get the Hawks aren't really going to get. He's probably not going to take a lot to move. And maybe his high is if you can get a 3rd round pick for him, I think you've done well.
Yeah, he's a 3rd, 4th line guy on a cup contender, if that, right? I mean, Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of, obviously, as we said, kind of a one-dimensional guy. I mean, he's on a cup team, a complimentary scorer. He's not going to be a go-to goal scorer, not going to be a first-line winger or anything like that. Like Sean said, he's going to help you out on your power play, even if, on a deep team that's on a 2nd unit, there's still some value there. Obviously the guy can really shoot the puck. That's for sure. I mean, I think, there's probably a taker out there for like a 3rd round pick, just for what he offers. And he does certainly have a tendency to get very hot. He's very streaky. So, if you take a bet on him and he gets hot at the right time, that could be a hugely valuable asset for somebody if they pull the trigger on him and pick him up, hoping that he does, do just that. So, yeah, I mean, I think there could be a taker. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep him though.
Yeah.
One thing I don't want to say the unsayable name, but he's kind of falls into the same category as like a Dylan Strome almost, where it's like, he's not really going to get you a whole lot. And if you're rebuilding, is he like the worst player to have around? Not really. I mean, somebody's got to play some minutes. Somebody's got to score some goals. So
you have to hit the cap floor. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the thing with Kubalik and Strome, is that Kubalik will not get a raise if he comes back as an RFA, or I would not imagine he would. And then Dylan Strome is a very cheap number 1 or a number 2 center if you're actually rebuilding. And I can't believe this is the second time I've been a supporting bringing Strome back conversation that I've initiated. But yeah, I mean, if they bring Strome back really cheap and you're rebuilding, you do have to hit the cap floor. So I don't
and you need NHL guys to play NHL minutes until your kids are ready.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, so I could definitely see that happening, and you're not going to get anything for Dylan Strome. No one's looking for a really slow power play specialist.
they couldn't get a third round. I think they were asking for a third round pick all off season. They couldn't get that.
No.
I got a trivia question for you guys.
Bring it. Love it.
Who, out of the healthy guys currently on the team, who do you think leads the team in faceoffs out of the guys that regularly takes them?
Dylan Strome.
It's Dylan Strome by a long shot. He's actually doing well, and it's something that the team needs. Again, he's a young guy. He's proven that he can play with the right players around him. I know the Hawks have been shopping him for God knows how long, but they're not getting any bites on him. Not the worst guy to keep around to win some faceoffs, to keep as your 1 or 2 seed while you're rebuilding.
He is a good chip.
He's like you guys said. I mean, I think the time to trade him is kind of past. I think he's more. I was firmly in the trade Strome camp for a long time, but he's not a bad guy to have around as you're going to be going through the trenches of this rebuild.
Yeah, just use him right. Just play him with offensive guys. Don't expect any defense, and just know that's what he is.
So you're not gonna have much of a chance because there's not gonna be too much left, as they're going through this. So.
Yeah.
He's going to be a top line guy if Taze isn't healthy or isn't coming back anytime soon. Who knows what's even going on.
He's probably your number 1 center.
Yeah.
If you're actually rebuilding, if Dylan Strome's your number 1 center, you are actually rebuilding, and that's fine.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, that would actually make a lot of sense. And I don't really think there's a market for him because I don't know if he could keep up with the pace in a playoff game. I just don't know if he's a good enough skater at that kind of level of hockey. So yeah, I want to talk about Patrick Kane real quick because his body language. I mean, Patrick Kane is the ultimate rink rat. He gets the biggest kick in the world out of playing hockey, or always has. Always a smile. Someone else scores, he's so happy for them. Like, I mean, it is his absolute life is the sport. And I think lately you're seeing for the first time, like some very disgruntled body language of disinterest. And I'm so sick of this. And I think that, Sunday's game, he looked ticked off the entire game and just being there. And who can blame him? And now he is, made comments about, God, I really hope whoever they bring in is someone who is going to listen to what the players have to say. Is it totally unrealistic? Now, I think the trade deadline's a whole different deal, but is it totally unrealistic for Patrick Kane this summer to walk into management and be like, let's do this. Get me out of here. Eric.
I mean, you'd hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like what we've said with a few other players earlier tonight, at this point, just purely looking at on the ice, getting this team back to being competitive, he's not really, at this point in his career, doing anything to get you there. This team is terrible as it is with him right now, and he's only going to, continue to kind of tail off at this point. I mean, he's still an elite player, but yeah, I mean, are they going to be a cup team again, with him here? No, just period. So then it does come down to what he wants to do. Does he want to stay in Chicago for his career? If he does, okay, fine. That whatever. If he doesn't, you have to move him as soon as you possibly can, because every day that passes, his value is going down.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I guess you could say his value might be better in the off season because then he would only have 1 year left. But, I mean, you don't want to necessarily wait until the last second to trade him and then not get anything or, not get much for him. Or worst case scenario, you pull a New York Islanders like they did with Tavares. You think he's going to come back, he doesn't, and you get literally nothing for him.
Yeah,
that would be awful if that happens. And then let's throw out the disclaimer to those Hawk fans out there that aren't entirely clear on the Patrick Kane, hey, just trade him situation. It's entirely up to him, folks. Let's make that clear. He has a complete no movement clause. If Patrick Kane is going to be traded, it's because he wants to be traded, not because management has decided to trade him. Let's make that clear. Sean, thoughts on Patrick Kane, thoughts on his future? Point per game player, 33 years old. He's still got a future in the game. He could still play for at least 5 more years if he stays healthy. But how much time does he have left in your mind?
Oh, he's got another 4 or 5 years. I think
with the Hawks, how much time does he have left?
I think teams have already, like, I've noticed what you've noticed. Teams have been checking in on if Patrick Kane's available at the trade deadline this year. So that's an indication that either feelers are going out through back channels or teams are just seeing what the Hawks are. I'm going to use another sports analogy, not baseball. Right now, I think he's the equivalent to Randy Moss on the Raiders.
Wow.
When Randy Moss was on the Raiders, he became disinterested. Things weren't good. He needed to get out of there to be re-energized, rejuvenated. Look at the season he had with Tom Brady in New England. I think that's what's going to happen with Patrick Kane. I think he's going to approach the Hawks in the offseason and say, listen, like, I would like you guys to do this. And if they're saying we're not willing to do this, he's going to say, okay, then I don't want to be here anymore. And that's when you've got to figure out what you can get for him. Now, obviously, you're not going to get near the value of what Patrick Kane is worth in terms of a hockey player. Mm-hmm. But on this team right now, you're still bad with Patrick Kane on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're still really bad. You're still going to be really bad for the next 2 seasons. So
they've wasted some pretty good years of that.
If he wants to go, you got to let him go. And I think this offseason, I think he's going to, unless the new GM comes in and says, here's my plan, and lays it all out for him, and it's to what Kane likes and thinks he's gone.
Yeah. So, Stache, 2 questions on Kane. 1, is there a chance for this trade deadline? Do you believe that in any scenario it could happen? And, of course, the Blackhawks would need to get incredibly creative, as would another team, as far as dollars and cents with the cap hit. Maybe, the New York Rangers are the name that you keep hearing out there that might be able to pull it off. And 2, devil's advocate, is there a shot that Patrick Kane actually sticks around in Chicago and extends and does a Shane Doan and just say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm here, man, no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, it's really up to him. As far as whether or not he's going to be a deadline guy, I don't believe so. I think his salary is too big for a team to get that creative at the deadline. It's tough because, the Hawks would probably have to retain, a decent chunk. They can retain up to 50%, but I don't think a guy like Patrick Kane would be a 50% guy. And it would just take a lot to get it done. It would take a lot of creativity by a contender team. I don't think it would happen.
You don't think somebody could pull a Mark Stone?
I don't think so. I think he's going to stick around. I don't know if he's the kind of guy that's going to ask for a trade. I don't think the Hawks would ask him for a trade. I think he's kind of earned the right to stick around if he wants to. I know the whole like passing team milestones, career milestones means a lot to him. I know that's something that he's been asked about, and he's said that this is this means a lot to me. So I get the vibe that he's going to stick around. They're going to have someone on the team that's worth watching and to sell some tickets, and he's going to be a fan favorite for many years, thanks to what he did in the last decade. I don't think he's going to move. Personally, I think he's going to stick around, and he may stick around for a couple more years after his contract is up.
So you think it's very, very possible he retires a Blackhawk?
Yeah, I do. If he wants to, have another shot at another cup, I think you certainly have to entertain that request and get creative with any team that would be willing to fit him in. I think he's earned that right as well. But if he doesn't ask for it, I think he's also kind of earned the right to stick around and sort of mentor those younger guys who are going to be coming up and are going to need a whole hell of a lot of mentorship as the team goes through it.
Yeah, I just really hope, and we're not in those, in the war room or in those offices or in the locker rooms, over by the United Center. But I think it was Bardo who said this last podcast that whether it's Tulsky, Darsh, Davidson, whoever, as soon as that new GM is appointed permanently, the first conversation they have is with Patrick Kane. And they say, look, we are going to do this. We are going to do this rebuild. And what do you want to do? You've meant everything to this team. If you want to stay and you want to stick it out, we'll find a way to make this work. If you want us to trade you now, we'll find it. We'll try to find it before the deadline. And if not, we'll try to figure it out over the summer. But, just give him that conversation. Be like, what do you like? We're rebuilding. It's happening. And sorry, we thought we could win another one. When you were still around, we're not going to win again probably while you're here. What do you want to do, man? So, and just don't blow smoke. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we'll get right back at it and blah, blah, blah. Give him what he's earned in that scenario. So
this just came to mind. Would a team that was out of it this year, like a team like the New York Islanders, would they try to make a move? If Kane was available, let's say, would they try to make a move to set him up for the next year, this trade deadline? Would that be something like you're buying an asset a year early, even though you won't be good, to get him acclimated?
I mean, it'd be a pretty bold move. I don't know. I don't know. We don't see that very often.
Not in hockey, but
no. And I think, boy, I mean, that is really bold. Particularly if you're missing the playoffs and your fan base are screaming, "All right, tear down," to go and do something like that. But again, a team like the New York Islanders, Sean, the team that you just referenced. I mean, they missed the playoffs this year, and no one saw that coming.
Right.
They're going to miss, and they've got some serious decisions to make in the offseason. So I'm not sure adding Patrick Kane is one of them, unless it's in June or July or August with a big move. I don't know if they could pull it off in the next 4 weeks. Well, they're probably trying to see who they're shipping out of town right now. I don't know. It's sports. Weird things go down. You never know.
Lou Lamoriello is developing quite the retirement community there on Long Island. So who knows?
Yeah, poor Zdeno. Anyway, any other topics of interest with the Hawks, fellas, before we declare victory for tonight's podcast?
I mean, one thing for me, this kind of goes back to the trade deadline and who could be a chip and stuff like that. And this is something I've said specifically about Brandon Hagel a lot. Both with other people on Twitter and even just in our private group chats. But you have to. The only thing that whoever's running this team can think about is asset maximization. Nothing else matters. you are not a contending team. You're not going to be for the next few years. So the only thing that matters is maximizing what you have in order to get to that point where you are contending again. Whatever that looks like, nothing else matters. So, like we said, Hagel, great player. You love having him on your team. Everyone wants a guy like that. But if you can be getting, a net positive for him, you have to take it.
Yeah.
And that's the same for any player in the organization.
If they hire an outside GM and they do it soon, like if it's Tulsky or someone like that, I could see them, the likelihood of Hagel being moved actually going up a little bit more. Just kind of saying that now I'm going to make this thing mine.
And and no attachment to the player, nothing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and I don't know if it's Kyle Davidson, if he feels any sort of allegiance to some of the current guys. Who knows? Maybe not.
And maybe, like Eric said, asset management and stuff like that. I mean, being another sport, being a long-suffering Cubs fan, when the Cubs were bad for there was a number of years, I looked forward to the prospects and reading about them. Yeah. Right now, the Hawks don't have that. All they have is Reichel. So if we could acquire more prospects, the best thing you can give a fan base right now we know it's going to be bad, but they need something to hope for the future. And I think if you could get players like that and hopefully make the right move and get a guy that helps transcend the franchise to the right direction, you got to do it.
Yeah. If you can make a splash, make a splash. Yeah, the prospect pool, particularly when you look at Blackhawks forwards, other than Lucas Reichel in the system, prospect-wise, boy, it's pretty grim. It's pretty grim. I will say this though, and I've talked a lot about this guy. He's Gate has Colin Delia. That's his guy. My guy's been Alec Regula for a while. I still think they might have something there. He's looked pretty good.
He played well when he debuted. Yeah, Derek King said he played well. He played well. He AHL All-Star this year. He might just be developing late.
Yeah, I mean he's steady. I mean, and if he's a big minute eater and he's in the plus column or even all the time, and he's a regular, you need those guys.
Yeah.
So
you need stay-at-home defensemen.
Yeah. Stache, any final thoughts? Thank you so much for joining us tonight, by the way.
Oh, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you guys. I agree with Eric. Asset maximization is the top priority for the team. They're in a really bad place on the ice, off the ice. They alienated a ton of fans with the current events of the past year. So people are already pissed off. There's, in light of that, there's really not a better time to rebuild. Anytime you can move some of these guys and get something and truly commit to a real rebuild, none of the BS that they've been spewing for the last few years. I think you got to do it. There's never been a better time to do it for them than right now. Mm-hmm. Whether or not they're able to win fans back is up to the fans based on what transpired. But, they got to try. They got to do what they can as an organization to rebuild and get some young guys in here and take those gambles. They're not in a position where they can't gamble. They have to gamble. They have to accumulate as many picks, as many young prospects as possible with high upside and maximize the assets that they have in order to do that. They just don't have a choice, and they need to get cracking. The faster we go, get to it and start moving some of these names around, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because they've been floundering for too many years, and they just need to sink and hope that they get the right person in place that'll help them rise.
Yeah, I mean the brand messenger of we like our team has exited stage left, so there are no excuses to to be stagnant and to sit idle before the trade deadline. Whoever gets appointed better get, like you said, Stache, better get cracking in the next few weeks. It's time.
And here's the thing too, like you're saying, Stache, that's the route they have to take. And if they don't, all they're doing is kicking that can down the road, however long they decide, because that's the only option they have. It's just a matter of when they want to do that. So
Yeah.
it's foolish to not do that as soon as possible.
Right.
Yep.
And helping a new, having a new group of individuals in charge and running the show kind of helps to that extent. And that's why I really think that they would benefit from an outside individual to come in and run the team, as opposed to, someone from the Bowman School of Hockey coming in and taking the show. No disrespect to Kyle Davidson, to be honest with you. I don't know. What he's capable of doing. He might be a great GM, who knows, but I just think it would be really beneficial to have an outside voice come in who doesn't have a personal relationship with the players, who can look at it objectively and do the right things that they need to do to get to where they need to be.
Right. As much as we like to criticize our favorite team, I do feel confident that this decision is in Danny Wirtz's hands, and not his father for that matter. But and that's not a knock on anyone. I think Danny Wirtz has done an excellent job. I really do. And trying to rebrand and retool. And I think he'll know what to do in this situation. And let's hope for the best on that. Shawnee, what were you going to say?
To echo you, I think they have done a nice job.
Yeah.
Regardless of how many candidates they've interviewed a diverse field, which
Right.
is something I don't think they've done in the past. So they're doing their due diligence on it. So I agree with you. I think Danny Wirtz, Jamie Faulkner have done a nice job. They just got to make the right pick now.
Yeah, I think they're terrific. I do.
One other thing with that too, I would agree with what Stache was saying, bringing someone in from the outside, just, from the fact of getting fresh eyes, but also, not that it's necessarily an asset, so to speak, but if you are going back to, trying to make the most of the things that you have within your organization, you can hire Kyle Davidson if you want, whatever, that's fine. But they seem to make it fairly clear that if they do bring someone else in, that Davidson's still going to be around. So why would you not bring in somebody else and still have Davidson? That's two people helping lead you forward instead of just one that you already have.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good note.
All right, folks. Well, fellas, thank you so much for tonight. Good stuff. Good to see you all. We'll find out a lot in the next 4 weeks of what the Chicago Blackhawks are up to and what their intentions are. Pay attention to Twitter. Pay attention to social media everywhere, because they will, or we're hoping they'll be busy. They'll at least hire a new GM soon, and hopefully that person will get on their horse and get after it. So, on behalf of Stache, again, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate it. On behalf of Stache, Chris Deme, Eric Andrews, and the mighty Sean Fitzgerald, I'm Andy Campbell. Thank you all so much for listening tonight. Be well and go Hacks.